Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you here this evening to get a legislative update so we can find out what pieces of legislation related to social justice are making their way through the system and how they are faring as they progress. So we have with us Karl Stomberg, who is an organizer with the Delaware Working Families Party and has previously served as a campaign team member on Medina Wilson Anton's campaign for State House and Laura Sturgeon's campaign for State Senate. So welcome, Karl. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to start sharing my screen real quick. I got some slides. They started out very colorful and then become very uncolorful very quickly. So apologize for that. Yeah, so my name is Karl. I am an organizer with the Delaware Working Families Party. So I work on both electoral stuff, which I won't talk too much about tonight, and also a lot of issue stuff. So a little bit real quick on Delaware Working Families Party. So we are technically a third party, but we work within the two-party system. So working in primaries, general elections, lower stuff. And one of our main goals is something that we call building governing power for working people. So part of that is elections. So, electing justice supporting candidates from diverse backgrounds, but it's also providing support for good electeds after they get into office, making sure we're helping them with policy and strategy, making sure that they can do the best that they can, running issue campaigns around these social justice bills that activate new people. And then we're also trying to generally build knowledge, skills, and leadership among working class people, people from disadvantaged backgrounds, people who might not be sort of your typical people to get involved in the political process. So also, someone messaged that, something that an organization you might know is Delaware United. We're actually merging with them. So they're someone who's done a lot of work on these bills as well. So if anybody's on their email list, they do a weekly briefing on some of the bills that are up in committee, some of the new bills that get introduced, some of the stuff that happened in the past week. So I'll be moving over to our system now. So you might have actually gotten one this past week if you are on that list. And we want to, continue some of the issue campaigns and advocacy that they were doing and support good people running for office going forward. But yeah, so with that, I want to jump a little bit more into some of the legislative updates, talk about some of the social justice, environmental justice, racial justice, all those bills that are up in the legislature right now. So I'll start with some of the ones that I can sort of speak to a little bit more because they're ones that WSP has been really focused on. And then we have kind of like a shooting gallery at the end of just like a whole bunch of different ones that you might be interested, might have been heard about, might be working on, and just sort of where those are in the process. So the first four we got here, so we got paid family medical leave, police transparency and reform, tenants' right to counsel, and Green New Deal legislation. So the first of those is paid family medical leave. So if you follow Sarah McBride, if you sort of been following the news, you probably have heard about this, but a couple of years ago, Delaware gave paid family and medical leave to all state employees. And last year, Sarah McBride introduced this bill to provide paid family medical leave, not quite to all Delawareans, but to a lot more Delawareans. So for anybody, for all businesses that have more than 10 employees, there will be a paid parental leave program. And for all employees that are over, or employers that have more than 25 employees, they'll also have family and medical leave. And so the small business can still opt into that, and it's paid for by a 0.8% wage tax. So very cheap for the individual employers, employees, but it then provides 80% for 12 weeks for parental leave and 6 weeks for medical and family leave of their income. So this has been a really long process. Sarah has been really great at, Senator McBride has been really great at sort of engaging the community on this. So it got introduced last year. There's been a lot of listening sessions, a lot of people engaged in the process. It has already passed the Senate, so Senate committee done, Senate vote done, and actually just yesterday we were down in Dover and it passed the House committee, so we're really excited about that. And so now it just needs a House vote. So it needs 25 votes because it adds a new tax, and in Delaware to add a new tax you need 3/5 of the vote. So in the House that is 25 people and there's 26 Democrats. So can only lose one Democrat or have to pick up a Republican vote. So not sure exactly what that looks like, but that is something that we're working on in terms of like getting people active, getting people in the districts of potential swing voters, and making sure that representatives know that their constituents support this bill, because we know that 84% of Delawareans support it, but sometimes if you're in like Hall, people don't really know that as much. WP is helping out with that. We're working as a part of the larger Delaware Cares Coalition, which has like, I think 50 organizations now. It's crazy large. And so, yeah, a lot of great people working on that. So next bill we got is Leobore reform. So for those who do not know, Leobore stands for the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. So right now in Delaware, all police misconduct records are entirely hidden, and that is a part of this Leobore bill. And in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, in the wake especially of the uprising in 2020, there was a big push to, and also in wake of local things. So in 2015, there was Jerry McDowell, who was tragically shot and killed by police in Wilmington. And then early in 2021, same thing happened to Lamont Moses, also here in Wilmington. So there's been a push by a lot of local activists to open up a little bit, open those records a little bit more. So it has made it through Senate committee, but that's all. And actually just a couple of weeks ago, there was a substitute filed that made major changes to the bill. So previously it opened up all these different things, and now it's only for very specific things. And unfortunately, the way that the language has changed it drastically limits the ability to get those and the ability for the community to be involved in community review boards. So a lot of advocacy organizations, including Delaware WP, have withdrawn support for the bill, just thinking that at this point it's not the most productive, unfortunately. There's split opinions on that, so we'd leave that up to anybody who wants to do their own research. But yeah, so unfortunately there's been a lot of stalling with that, as yeah, the lobby against it is unfortunately very strong. But yeah, so next bill, some better news on that, tenants' right to counsel. So right now, you do have a right to legal counsel in criminal cases, but in all civil cases, that is not as much a thing. So what this bill would do is for people making under 200% of the federal poverty line, it would give those people a right to legal counsel in evictions. So right now, landlords have access to what I believe is like a Article 50 representative, or they can hire their own lawyer. I forget the exact name of the representative. So it's a non-lawyer lawyer, basically, who has expertise in defending in those cases. But unless you get access to legal aid, you don't have that if you are a tenant. So there was an initial bill released last year that would have done that plus a whole bunch of other things. But as compromise, a lot of those things are stripped out. So it's mostly just that tenants' right to counsel, and tenants' right to counsel, renters' right to representation. But the core of the bill is still there. Sort of the main goal of that bill is still intact. And it passed the Senate. So yeah, Senate committee, Senate floor, and actually just 2 weeks ago, it passed House committee, which it had been held up in last year. So that was a really big achievement. We're really happy about that. So that is a simple majority bill, so it only needs 21 votes. But as far as I'm aware, there's no plans to put it on the agenda just yet. So we don't know exactly when it's going to go for a vote, and we don't know exactly who still needs to be convinced on that. But that is something that with a lot of other organizations, I know Community Legal Aid Society has taken the lead on that, ACLU, Metropolitan Women Urban League, a lot of organizations are involved in that. And we've been trying to be supportive through canvassing efforts and general education on that. And our last thing here in this section is Green New Deal. So this is a much broader concept. It's not just one bill, but basically the idea behind a Green New Deal is you're tackling environmental issues, obviously trying to fight climate change, clean up our communities, make things better for people. But you're trying to do that in a way that explicitly emphasizes social justice, racial justice, and also tries to create a lot of new jobs. Because so often people try to pit the environment and workers against each other. But the goal of the Green New Deal is to save our environment, fix climate change in a way that is creating, nationally millions, in Delaware probably more like thousands of good paying union jobs. So we're still in sort of early stages of that. So a few things that are happening right now. One is HB 259. So this is our one that's already been released and is actually through the House committee, about to pass House hopefully. Pass House hopefully that's that Senate. And so that basically makes it that when there is a catastrophic release of hazardous chemicals, so if anybody remembers back in 2018, the Croda plant on Delaware River had this hazardous release. They actually had to close down the Delaware Memorial Bridge, I think, for the first time in its operation. So, you know, some people were notified about that through landlines, but a lot of people unfortunately don't have landlines anymore. So you had a lot of people in the Route 9 corridor that had no idea what was going on and were just going about their day with a lot of hazardous chemicals around. So this bill would make it so that the wireless emergency alert, so for example, if the storm gets a little bit worse and there's like a severe thunderstorm warning, you get it on your phone and you start, it would basically create that for those catastrophic emergency alerts as well. So yeah, if there's a big explosion near you, you'd get that alert on your phone and that would expand it to a lot more people. And then yeah, other things that are sort of in the process right now but haven't been released. One is a Green Amendment, which would give a constitutional right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. So that has been used in other states like Pennsylvania, like Montana, to, you know, give citizens the right to challenge certain projects that would like harm their communities, and generally, you know, make things a little bit easier for people in those communities. And we have a lot of them, unfortunately, here in Delaware that are affected by water pollution, that are affected by air pollution, that are affected by chemicals come together in certain weird ways that make people sick. Because unfortunately, yeah, here in Delaware, we have a high number of cancer clusters. Down in Sussex, we have a lot of issues with well water, other stuff like that. So Green Amendment would help sort of provide more legal protection against that. And so it's a constitutional amendment that would have to happen both this year and in a new session, but trying to get the ball rolling on that. And last thing is cumulative impact. So right now, when you're building a new facility, you have to consider the direct impact of those chemicals that might be released. But the thing about chemicals is that they're very complicated. And sometimes there might be something coming from another facility. And the two things coming together, each of them might not be hazardous in themselves, but together they are hazardous. And the cumulative impact bill would help account for that. And that's something that's been worked on for a few years. Hopefully going to get that released this year. And yeah, so that is sort of some of the things that we have in the pipeline for the Green New Deal issue campaign. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more coming on that, and especially digging more into that economic justice aspect, because a lot of these are just purely environmental right now. But yeah, so those are some of the bills up there. And then, yeah, this is our rapid round, some of the things that WP has not been involved in, but that, or has not been directly involved in, but are definitely definitive social justice bills, and things that are in various levels of, you know, likelihood in terms of stage of the process. I'm actually going to bring up real quick my other document so that I know where everything is. So yeah, we can just run through these fines and fees. We got Lynn here. Lynn knows very well about all this. So that is currently waiting in House Appropriations, and then we'll need a House floor vote. Needs to pass the Senate, but basically, you know, reduces the impact of some of these these fines and fees that add up for a lot of lower income people that come through the criminal justice system, through the courts, and yeah, have been a real big issue for a lot of people. Homelessness, Bill of Rights for people experiencing homelessness. That was a bill introduced last year, would provide some more basic rights for people who are experiencing homelessness, which is unfortunately, I know there was just a hit count last month or a couple months ago, and in places like Kent and Sussex, the homeless population, because of rising housing costs, because of the pandemic, because of many other things, has been rising. So something that I know the Homes campaign is working on, and that is currently in House Judiciary, and then would need to both pass the House and the Senate. So I think that's one where they introduce it. They're still waiting to see if they have the votes on it. Cannabis legalization. So as some of you may have seen, cannabis legalization actually failed in the House, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago. However, since then, the sponsor, Edzinski, has split that into 2 different bills. So one of them is just pure cannabis legalization. So it just says this was illegal, it's no longer illegal. And then there's another bill that adds a lot of the social justice aspects, adds the expungement. It adds basically everything that was in the previous bill for anybody who followed it as a separate bill. So the first bill will just require a simple majority. I believe that is going to be up pretty soon. I know they're planning to vote on it. And the other bill will require a 3/5 because similar to paid family medical leave, it'll add a new tax. And to do that, you need a higher majority in Delaware. The omnibus bill. So for anybody who's been following Melissa Minor Brown's efforts, so she has been really great on all sorts of things from maternal health to criminal justice reform. And she has released a series of bills. I don't remember the specifics on each of them. So if anybody has questions on that later, I would have to double check. But she and Senator Marie Pinckney and a few other people, the Black Mothers in Power campaign, which has been focused on birthing justice, they've released a series of bills, I believe 6 or 7 in total, that would provide a lot more protections, especially for disadvantaged mothers, and give people more access to different things that they need. So it goes from people in people getting Medicaid, people who are in prisons, a lot of people who are in different situations that don't always get the care that they need. So a lot of those are still waiting for a health vote. So we can probably expect to see that over the coming months, start to work its way through. And yeah, so a lot of good stuff in there. End of life options bill. So that is called Bombach's bill. So that has been one that's been out there for a while. So I believe it made it through committee. Yeah, it made it through committee. It is still waiting a House floor vote. And then would have to go through the Senate as well. So that is one, yes, end of life options, assisted suicide. It has a bunch of different names. Basically gives patients more options to, how they choose to end their lives with chronic illness. Property reassessment. This one's a little bit esoteric in terms of how it's a justice bill, but this actually came out of the ACLU suing the state a few years ago and succeeding in basically requiring that the schools are funded through these property tax assessments that in Newcastle County, they happened back in the 80s. In Kent and Sussex, they actually happened back in the 70s. So it has been 40, 50 years for some of these reassessments. And it leads to some skewing of where the actual school funding goes. So right now, there is actually property reassessments underway, I believe in all 3 counties, definitely Newcastle County, that was just court required, but now there's also a bill introduced that's going to require it every 5 years going forward, so that we don't end up in the situation where we go 30, 40, 50 years without the property reassessment that leads to kids in certain schools just not getting the resources that they need. Another bill, moving over to that other column, medical for undocumented children. I think I meant to say medical care for undocumented children. So that is a bill, I believe, by Krista Griffiths that was just introduced a couple of weeks ago. But basically, right now, undocumented children do not have access to a lot of the same medical insurance that other kids have through no fault of their own. And this bill would make sure that that was expanded to undocumented children. So that is currently also in House Appropriations, as it would obviously, for stuff like Medicaid, that would cost the state a bit more money. So it's waiting House Appropriations vote, then it'll need to go to the floor, and then it'll need to pass the Senate as well. Paid time off to vote. So that is a bill basically giving people, allowing to take them part of the day off on election day to go and vote. So yeah, that was introduced by Representative Eric Morrison a few weeks ago. So that is also still waiting for a House Administrative Committee because they're the ones to deal with all the election stuff. And yeah, so it needs to pass the House, pass the Senate, but that would hopefully give people more of an opportunity to vote on election day because you have a lot of people that either don't know about absentee ballots or they work a few shifts on election day and often aren't able to make it. And this should give them that right. Another, I believe there was also another Eric Morrison bill, if I remember correctly. Yep. HB 354, which would provide, expand the Delaware Whistleblower Protection Act. So right now you can, blow the whistle in your workplace, but there's certain things that aren't fully protected under that yet. So one of the things that this bill would do is preclude an employer from reporting or threatening to report an employee's citizenship or immigration status or their family member's citizenship or immigration status. So basically, if someone is trying to expose something bad happening in their workplace, the employer can't then say, well, I'm going to call ICE on you. I'm going to call DHS on you. I'm going to call DHS on your family. Whether they actually have an immigration issue or they just say, like, make up an immigration issue, it's just a way to prevent, especially in these workplaces that have a lot of immigrants in them that often can be a little bit more exploitative. Want to make sure that workers there still have those same protections and don't feel that they're going to be threatened based on their immigration status. And so the last one here, and I know there's also different opinions on this one, but this was introduced by Representative Nadine Wilson-Anton to provide a pause on new charter schools in Delaware. So basically right now, what tends to happen is you have public schools, a charter school come in, and there's not a whole lot of, it's not legally required that they basically look at the effect on how that affects public schools. And so a new charter school will come in, you know, maybe it's great, but it'll take away people from the public schools, reduce the funding, and make the situation significantly worse for the people who are still remaining in those public schools. So the Christina School District passed a resolution a couple months ago asking for there to be a pause on these charter schools or these new charter schools. And so this is a bill to try to do that at state level. It would be temporary. It would also just try to create a new system so that those sorts of things were considered. And there's an amendment added to it recently that there's a few charter schools that are trying to expand right now. It would not affect those, just things over the next few years until a new system can be established to make sure that both public schools and charter schools are being treated equitably. Yeah, so that is sort of a rapid fire through some of those new bills. Ways to get involved. So I can say this through the WP side. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can get involved with all this. Some things that we're doing are probably the most useful resource here, and I can copy and paste some of these into the Zoom chat if anybody wants to see them. So the first is a great resource that we're working on with a few other organizations on, the Delaware Activist Calendar. So with other groups and ourselves, we try to put any meetings, events, protests, campuses, anything like that into that calendar. And that's also something, if you have a group that you're working with that you'd like to add on to that, feel free to, I believe there's a link in there to put a request in to add an event. And if not, we have Sarah in the chat as well, who is sort of maintaining that. And I think she can walk you through how to do that. We always ask people to become WP members because we're always trying to grow our organization, expand the amount that we're able to help out, both with other organizations and then with getting more people in office. And then we also have a, so I'll drop that link as well, if anybody's interested. And then the last thing is to join one of our teams. So we have different teams working on that election support stuff. So making sure that the electeds that are sort of in our sphere are doing the most they can to pass good bills effectively and include the community in that. But we also have people who are doing issue campaigns, so directly lobbying people who maybe aren't already on our side, and working to grow the group of people, educate more people, get new people elected. And so we have teams working on all sorts of different stuff. So if you're interested in working with us directly, then that is one of the ways you can get involved. But yeah, so hopefully that was a reasonable amount of time. Hopefully that was some good information, and yeah, opening to questions and answers.
On the screen at this point, so we can go back into discussion mode. And I know as a member of some of these other campaigns, I just recently became aware of the activist calendar and things, and have actually talked with Sarah about putting our Thursday classes on there, because many times the topics are of broader interest to the community and things, and we'd like more people in the community to be aware that they have the option of joining this. So I think we'll probably try to add at least the ones that we think are relevant to the local social justice movement and things. We'll add those to the calendar. I guess one question I have for you, Carl, if you know, in looking at all those bills, how many of those have fiscal notes attached to them, and how often does that play a role in the ability to get them to move forward? I mean, certainly with fines and fees, we've seen that as one of our hurdles and issues is it has a fiscal note, so it has to go through appropriations first. And I don't have a sense for how many of these other bills get held up for that same reason.
Yeah, that is a great question. And so, yeah, for those who do not know, a fiscal note is when a bill is going to cost the state money. The Controller General's office, which is one of the agencies within the Delaware State Legislature, they have to do basically an estimate of, okay, how much is this going to cost? So anything that costs more than $100,000 to the state has to go through House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance Committee, which basically just, they're the ones that actually write the budget. And so they have to say, okay, we're going to fit it into this budget here. So like, here's how we're going to pay for it. And yeah, it's a weird situation because it's always a little unclear from the outside because a lot of us don't spend our days pouring through like the 200-page budget that the governor puts out. But yeah, so if it's something that's in the governor's budget, so for example, paid family medical leave, the governor said, oh, we expect this to pass this year, we're going to put it in our recommended budget. So Appropriations Committee basically just says, okay, sounds good, you know, just giving a thumbs up on it basically. Whereas for fines and fees, for example, where the governor may either just not be supportive or may just not have it in his budget, then the Appropriations Committee has to decide, okay, where are we actually going to put this in our budget? How are we going to pay for this fiscal note that we're estimated to have? So yeah, just to give a little bit of background for those who might not know. And yeah, so a lot of these bills, not as many of them have fiscal notes. So tenants' right to representation has a fiscal note. The medical coverage for undocumented children has a fiscal note. Generally, anything that's going to create a program of some sort is probably going to have a fiscal note, or that's going to get rid of a fine or a fee is going to have a fiscal note. Whereas something that is more just about establishing rights or just saying that like, oh, this is a thing that we can do now or that we can't do now, that is usually not going to have a fiscal note. So for example, like law enforcement officer bill of rights, that will eventually have some sort of fiscal effect in some way because, you know, you have to go through the reports, you have to do this, you have to do that, but it's not necessarily going to have a fiscal note. So sometimes that can be really difficult because also the Appropriations Committee is still a committee. They still get to, they also are charged with putting it into the budget, but they also do get to vote on it. So if they don't agree, they don't have to actually let it through. So right now, and yeah, sorry, I don't know how political but this group is, but like there's a thing where there are 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And obviously people's partisan affiliation does affect the way that they vote on things. So there's a situation where if one Democrat switches over to vote with the Republicans, then it stalls in committee. And there's a few there's members on there that are good. There's some members that tend to be less good on certain issues. So for something that might be a little bit controversial, it can be a big barrier because they can just say, maybe there's room in the budget, but we just don't support this, so we're not going to put it in. So for a bill that might be totally fine everywhere else, that can be a big choking point in the legislative process. So usually, yeah, it's going to depend a lot on the controversialness of the bill itself. So if it's like a super controversial bill, that'll make it harder to pass, and also the fiscal note. So if you are spending $100,000 on something, even if it's kind of controversial, a lot of times they'll be like, not a big deal, we'll let it through. But if it costs like $10 million, then they're going to take that a lot more seriously. Because even a non-controversial bill, if it costs $10 million, they're going to have to take a look at that. And honestly, depending on how the budget's looking, they might just be like, yeah, we can't really do this year. Like luckily this year we have a very big surplus. There's not really that many good excuses to not have that happen. But in certain years, like back in 2017, there was a big budget deficit. And at that point, you're not even looking at new costs. You're just looking like, okay, what are we able to remove from our budget in a way that hopefully doesn't hurt too many people?
Both Roger and Sally have their hands up, but just to answer your question, Carl, this is a nonpartisan group. So
Okay.
we're focused on social justice issues, so that often aligns us in one direction, but it is nonpartisan, and we seek to have nonpartisan views here. So, Roger.
So yeah, not making any judgment on Republicans versus Democrats, but they do have that partisan registration.
Yep.
I was wondering who is working on the Green New Deal parts of the agenda, and given that it's a social justice, mostly social justice, maybe some of the things I'm interested in are not included in that. But who's working on that? Is there a separate group? Are you taking advice from Sierra Club or other environmental organizations, or what's going on?
Yeah, so in Delaware, everything always tends to be we're always very collegial. We're always working together on different stuff. So on the WP side, we have a Green Deal issue campaign that's actually run by another one of our people, Rachel Gregoire, who is, some people might have been, some meetings might have met her. She's relatively new, but is doing great work. And so that's one specific group, that's how we're approaching it, but we are working very closely with like a Sierra Club. We're working with Delaware Interfaith Power and Light. We're working with some of the local groups, like environmental justice groups. So Delaware Concerned Residents for Environmental Justice on some things, people in the different affected communities. So yeah, all these things, like especially stuff like the cumulative impacts, especially stuff like Green Amendment, a lot of that is a group effort. And honestly, a lot of stuff, we're not even necessarily leading it, but we're trying to put the weight that we do have behind it.
Thank you.
Sally?
I was wondering if you know what the price tag on fines and fees is.
That is a great question. I do not have that up right
I
now,
could answer
but
that one for you, Carl.
yeah, Lynn, I think probably has a better idea. Yeah.
The fines and fees is going to be a little less than $3 million a year, and about $1 million of that per year comes from losses to the transportation fund, because if we stop suspending driver's licenses, people won't have to pay to get their driver's licenses reinstated. And that's about $1 million a year. And then there's another about $2 million a year that gets collected from probation and public defender fees, and a couple of the other smaller fees that are going to be eliminated with this bill. So again, it's all loss of revenue. There's a very small one-time charge in there for some things that have to be done to the software and systems to be able to do reporting and things differently. But almost all of it is just lost revenue that has to be replaced.
So that doesn't sound like it should be a huge impediment. Is that your read or not?
Well, $3 million a year is still $3 million a year. And the governor chose not to put it in his recommended budget. But the good news is that we just found out today that the chair of the House Appropriations Committee is putting it in. It'll be up for a vote in a meeting next Wednesday. So we're very excited that was big news today. We're very excited that it's finally going to go up for a vote, and we think it will make it through House Appropriations next week.
And you'll let us know if there are things we should do, like calls.
We will, and we are going to ask people to both do another letter writing campaign, as well as getting people to show up for public comment. We're not sure on the strategy yet, because the way House Appropriations works, there will be multiple bills up to be voted on in a 2-hour meeting. And they've said that they are going to cut the meeting off at 2 hours. So whatever bills don't get covered will have to go into a future meeting. We're lucky because our bill is listed first. I think that means we'll be first on the agenda and we'll get through. But if we get a whole bunch of people to show up and everyone gives their 2-minute public comment, we're hurting the ability of other bills getting voted on. So I'm not sure what our strategy will be. We may ask everyone to just do a 10-second, vote yes on this bill next. I don't know. But we will put out a call to action to get people to show up for that meeting on Wednesday at noon. Thanks.
Yeah, to give a little context for how kind of incredible that is, I was just talking with a friend who works in the legislature, because they flagged that, yeah, there's going to be this House Appropriations Committee meeting. The last time he can remember an actual meeting being held So normally they'll just walk the bill, which means that they won't hold a meeting. They'll just get all the members to sign the back of it, and they'll say, we voted on it, it's out. Apparently the last time they held like a proper meeting like this was like 2017. So this does not happen very often. So it's really cool that that fines and fees is getting put on there. So it's fines and fees, one of Chris's bills, there's the income tax bill, and then also I thought legal weed was on there, not, but it's not. But fines and fees getting on there is really big. So really congratulations, Lynn, on that, because that's awesome.
We're real excited. Thanks. I guess I'll just throw out another sort of general question is,
Lynn,
oh, yes.
Roger has his hand up also, I believe.
Sorry, I didn't see. Roger, please go.
I think I heard you say something about the charter school moratorium. Our grandson is in Odyssey, and Odyssey was very upset about something in that bill. So did you say that the bill has been revised to allow expansion of existing charter schools, or how did that work?
Yeah, so for charter schools that are currently in the process of expanding, which I know, Odyssey I know is one of the ones that got particularly upset about that. There's a couple others as well that I know, like I forget if Odyssey is upset because they're in the process of expanding or because they were potentially planning to expand in the future. But so the bill was basically revised as that there's, I believe, 3 charter schools, I do not remember which ones they are, that are currently in the process of expanding. So they put in the request, they have all the, they have all the paperwork in order, and the original bill as it was written would have potentially just stalled that, which was never the intention of the bill, but was sort of like an accidental, like, oh, we wrote it the wrong way. So there is an amendment for things that are currently, so charter schools that do want to expand in the future after the bill passes would not be able to, at least until the pause is over, which I believe is not expected to go for more than a couple years, because just for a little bit of context, this actually has happened before. So back in 2015, there was a similar thing where so a few charter schools were expanding a little bit too quickly and was like harming some of the public schools, which so in 2015 actually by a pretty decent margin passed the charter moratorium, which lasted for, I believe, a couple of years, and then they got their new system in place, and since then, it's been redone. So this is not a totally unprecedented move, and actually has happened pretty recently. And I mean, personally, so as mentioned earlier, I was campaign manager for Medina Wilson Anton, who put up the bill. So I've been working with her on it. I did not go to a charter myself. I went to a magnet school, Cap Callaway, but obviously have a lot of friends that went to charter. Medina herself went to a charter school of Wilmington. So very aware with like the charter system and for like a lot of the benefits that it does provide for a lot of people, both for people who are looking for that specialized experience or for people who really just cannot, are not resourced well in the public school system. And so the goal of the bill isn't to harm that, but it is to, the idea of school choice is that hopefully you're having multiple good choices. But if we set up the system so that only the charters are sort of set up to succeed, then that hurts the people who do want to choose to stay in their neighborhood school or their public school. And so that is the intention behind the bill, because Medina went to a charter herself. She went to a public school even before that. So the goal is to hopefully, make a system that works better for everybody.
Thank you.
So what's your sense?
Carl?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Lynn. Carl, there are several of us in the Peace and Justice Work Group that are very interested and perhaps anxious about the Leobore efforts. What's your view on first of all, the substitute bill? Has the substitute bill reached the Senate floor, or is that major step still being negotiated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can give, because this go till 8.
Yeah.
So I'll try to give just sort of a quick rundown for those who haven't been following the Leobore fight as closely in terms of like what was in the original bill, what's in the substitute, and then sort of where it stands. So well, actually, so originally, I think I covered it basically, yeah, that it opens up the original bill opened up all misconduct records for police. So that was never really going to have a super great chance. So the sponsor to the allotment had a series of listening sessions with different stakeholders over the second half of last year. And sort of what came out of that, the expectation around that, basically, and that was the records themselves were going to be limited to just serious and substantiated records, which basically means certain types of misconduct that were seen as more serious. So like small infractions, like things that most people probably wouldn't care about would not be included, and they would have to be substantiated in that, some group, internal or external, would have had to basically say, okay, we actually know this happened, and it's not just some claim that somebody made, which, fairly reasonable on its face. And then the also part of that was that community review boards, which would have had, the original bill had actually quite extensive powers for them. So they would have been able to subpoena, they would have been able to make judgments, they would have been able to do several different things. And after the different listening sessions, that piece didn't really get touched. The cops were mostly concerned with the records element of that. So then, January comes around, legislative session, and this is just talking from my perspective and from the perspective of a few other activists. We didn't really hear a whole lot in terms of what was going on. We were trying to get out into the districts, knocking doors in the districts of people we knew maybe were on the fence or leaning no. And then it sort of was made known that they had made further changes to the bill that were sort of unclear as to what they were. And so a lot of groups, ASO Smart Justice Campaign, the Campaign for Fair Policing, WP was part of this group, and some of the affected families. So one of the, some of the people who've been a part of this process are the sisters of Jeremy McDowell, so Keandra McDowell, Keandra Ray now, and Lakeisha Nix, who is the sister of Lamont Moses, who was tragically killed back in 2021. Sort of put forward the set of non-negotiables was the term for this group. So it was like, and Sarah might have to back me up on these because she was involved in this. First was, we're serious and substantiated, fine, but we need to make sure that the substantiation is fair, so that like it can't just be only the police policing themselves, because otherwise they just have the same veto that they would have had before. And then making sure that the local community review boards still have, not necessarily, they didn't have to have as much power as the original bill, because it was actually pretty extensive, but that there was still some power reserved for these local boards, and that the board should have not just be made up of like legislators, government employees, nothing against legislators, government employees, or law enforcement, but that it has, representation from the community itself and not just people who are already connected. And then Sarah, you might have to back me up on what the fourth one was, if you can put in the chat or something. But basically, there was, some non-negotiables set forth by some of the advocacy groups, some of the stakeholders, and the families themselves. And so then, I believe it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago now, the substitute bill was released, and unfortunately had very few of those things. So it did have the serious and substantiated language, but it did say that the only people who could substantiate were basically law enforcement, like some, either the police departments themselves or another law enforcement affiliated institution. So community review boards had no ability to review any of those records unless the police said they could, which we think is a pretty large loophole in that system, and worry that that would basically allow police to, beforehand, they have misconduct records, they're private, they have no incentive not to investigate them correctly, but if they are the ones who are determining whether these go public or not, they do have an incentive, unfortunately, to keep things private and maybe not fully investigate things. And the community review boards were changed so that the local boards, so those created at the municipality and county level, have essentially no power whatsoever. Like, they meet, they can review trends, that's about it. And it created one statewide board that would basically be administered by the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice is good on some stuff, they're not as good on other stuff. And also, we don't really, Kathy Jennings has generally governed as a progressive attorney general, but you never know when you're going to get someone there who's maybe a little bit less inclined to, support these efforts. And so that had a bit more power, but actually even the statewide board run by the DOJ had less power than the community review boards did in the original bill. So it could only make recommendations, and the recommendations were basically decided on by the police department. And they couldn't make any of those public, so all that would have to be private. So it would only be within those community review boards. So I believe ACLU, WFP, Fair Policing, I forget, I believe ODS, which is the Office of Defense Services, which is public defenders. All of these groups have come out opposing the amendment, or opposing the new substitute, basically saying that it'd be one thing if it just watered down the bill, made it a little bit less good, but just kind of, unfortunately, undermines, it would actually make it harder to create something better because it entrenches the system that would be hard to reform in a way that would be more beneficial between the substantiation and the statewide community review board, which is something that, like, to be honest, we are just not happy about, because this is something that a lot of us, and I'm sure you have as well, has put a lot of hours into supporting, and was just very sad to see kind of a lot of the part of it being taken out. There are still people who are supporting it, so just sort of to give the other side on it. So I believe all the senators who were on it before, a few House members have taken their names off. So Medina, Wilson Anton, Sharia Moore, a couple other people have taken their names off. So sorry, then get it back. I'm sorry, because I sort of took everybody on an odyssey there. To get back also to where it is. So it got out of Senate committee last year, and so it is still waiting for a Senate floor vote. It is a simple majority bill, so it only needs 11 votes. What I had heard when they first dropped the substitute was they were going to try to release it and then have it come up for a vote the following week, but that never happened. So I'm a little unclear because there was a few people who were not signed on before. So Stephanie Hansen, Kyle Gay, and at least one or two other people who were not signed on before, they signed on to it with the substitute. But it seems like they may still not have the 11 votes that they need, or else I think they would have brought it up for a vote. So we do not know who those people are that are still against it. Presumably, so the police are also still against it because, the stuff that it does still do, I think is stuff that they don't necessarily want. So likely people on the right end of the spectrum are probably still going to oppose it. And a few people on the left end of the spectrum are probably not going to support it. So I'm not sure if there's 11 votes in the middle there. And yeah, because basically all the information we have at this point, because the communication is unfortunately sort of broken down between the sponsors and some of the advocates. The only information we have is for who's actually a sponsor on it right now and who's not a sponsor on it right now. So in the Senate, that is Tizzy Lockman, Kyle Gay, Marie Pinkney, Stephanie Hansen, Sarah McBride, Nicole Poore, Dave Zicola, Laura Sturgeon, and Brian Townsend. So that is 9 sponsors in the Senate, so it would need 2 more votes on top of that. So if you know any representatives or senators that are not on that list, those would probably be the people, if you still want this passed, those would be the people to reach out to. So I know like people like Spiros Manzavinos, Bruce Ennis, Jack Walsh, there's a few others that I'm totally drawing a blank on right now. So there's a few people who still aren't on it. But yeah, so it's still waiting for a Senate vote. I do not know what the timeline looks like on that, but you kind of have to look at the sponsors and non-sponsors to figure out who might be supportive right now. Because otherwise people are mostly not being very communicative about where they stand on it.
I think Bill was actually being way too modest. He's very familiar with the ins and outs, and last week had a detailed conversation with Kyle Evans Gay, who is his senator, and pushing her for strengthening it and beyond the watered down version that it is now. So he's been working hard to get her and others to try to strengthen it. And I think we're all just curious as to what others are hearing from any other behind the scene legislators in terms of what's gonna happen next. Is Tizzy actually gonna introduce it? Will there be amendments introduced? What is the likely next step? So.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing all that work. Because yeah, and I know like I'm a big fan of Kyle's gay. Like we've talked as well about this, and I do think that she's working generally in good faith. But yeah, it's good to have people reaching out to their senators to work on that, because yeah, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's all about.
So I guess a sort of a closing us out question is, how optimistic are you about, the whole list of different initiatives or bills that you talked about? Where do you think we'll be in June? How many of those do you think we're likely to get across the finish line? Which ones do you think are the most dependent on the community really showing up big to help push them? Like, where would the effort be most effective for the bills that you talked about tonight?
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, personally, I'm just eternal optimist. Like, I don't think I could be doing this work as much as I have been over the last couple of years and not have to have some sort of driving optimism behind it, because otherwise, you get burnt out, you get depressed, which, it happens even without the optimism. But I think a lot of this is going to happen. So yeah, I've only been following a few legislative sessions, but the one thing that I've seen is that what legislators love to do is, like the rest of us, they love to procrastinate. They love to introduce bills late in the session and then be like, oh my God, it's June 15th. We got to get this bill through in the next 2 weeks. And this happened at the end of 2021 as well. It happened at the end of 2020. They always do it. Where it's just like, oh my, we have to all these committees. We can't do a committee. Let's just walk it. I don't know. Like, so I think there's a lot of these. Like, for example, Bill of Rights for people experiencing homelessness has just been kind of sitting there for a while. But there's a lot of bills that were doing that back in 2021, and then it's like, oh, we should get this done. Because also we're at the end of the session and not just the end of the year. So any bills that don't pass by June 30th have to be reintroduced in the following January instead of just being able to carry over. Which in some cases, maybe that's a good thing. Some cases, maybe not. So yeah, I think a lot of, especially like a lot of the small ones, like the two things that I think is like size and sort of who's already pushing for them. So for like a Bill of Rights for people experiencing homelessness, for like a fines and fees, for end of life options, there's already, a generally pretty well established community or groups supporting those efforts. And I think as long as they're effectively working with the legislator to put in those requests and put the pressure on leadership and committee heads to actually put those on the committee, then I think a lot of them have really good shots of winning, because a lot of those things are hard things to vote against. Some of them more so than others. But yeah, so I think a lot of the effort there is going to be not just whipping the votes, but also making sure that the sponsors are being effective and that the committee heads are being effective in putting them on the agenda. Because that seems to have been where we really run into that's where a lot of the stalling happens. Is it gets introduced, they say you have to hear it within 12 legislative days, but that's never been real. That's always been fake. And so yeah, making sure that people are putting the pressure not just on the sponsors, but also on the committee heads, I think is a big thing. And yeah, for like those smaller bills that maybe don't get as much love, that might be, even a little bit controversial. I think, one of the things that, through these like weekly briefings that we do is making sure that people are aware of it when it does get put up. And that we're letting enough people know that this is up and getting out to the networks, because, unfortunately, the situation that I've run into just, out knocking doors, you talk to a lot of people who are working, 9 to 5, they're working 2 shifts, or they live up in Wilmington, can't testify for something down in Dover. Making sure that people who do have that privilege to be able to like show up to these meetings do as regularly as possible. And finding more people who can do that would definitely be helpful, because with big bills, people have made up their mind when they're going in, but for smaller bills, they have not. A lot of times they don't even know what's going on. You show up, you give a really good testimony, that actually matters for a lot of these legislators. So I'd say, yeah, showing up, and then, yeah, at the end of the day, just, you know, being active, organizing, posting about it, finding new people to get involved, contacting your legislators. With big bills like an SB 140, like I said, the bigger the bill, the more public the bill. Honestly, that's sort of a situation where it's almost like it's sort of paradoxical. It's like, oh, the less you can kind of do to influence any one person. But for a lot of these bills, just one person reaching out, just two people reaching out will completely change their opinion on something. So that's really important. So reaching out yourself, finding people in districts who can reach out, showing up to these committee hearings, getting more people involved, letting them know how it affects them, and making sure they can do those same things. I think, yeah, that's at least my somewhat limited experience seems to be the best way.
Thank you very much. If there aren't any other people who are dying to sneak in one last question, we'll say our thank yous. We really appreciate getting the update and lots of good ideas on how we can continue our advocacy. And thank you, Sarah, for putting all those links in the chat. Very, very helpful. And one more link. Anyone who wants to save the chat, now's your chance before we say goodnight. So save the chat now. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. And everyone have a good week.
Thank you.
Sue,
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you, Len. Thanks.
Sue Linderman, you're still muted.
I keep saying that to others. So next Thursday, please join the Westminster Maundy Thursday service in person or online at our YouTube channel. And Sally and Roger in particular invite you to join us on the 21st of April for our Earth Week program.
Yes.
So have a good week, everyone, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.